day 4664 of quarantine. I'm jobless, bored, and have an odd craving for a lot of cheese. I haven't spoken to a single soul in a while, making me question my sanity as I write this. I think I'm starting to hear voices, but I can't hear what they're saying. It just sounds like a constant humming.
Oh, forgot you couldn't put this shit on.
The first-person shooter genre is a part of gaming like butter is to bread. I enjoy it, it's more than welcome to stay, but the more I have it, the more detached I get from it. Too much of one thing is 9 times out of 10 not a good thing, and we've seen it happen countless times. I'm not saying that first-person shooters are currently bad, I'm just saying there hasn't been any groundbreaking FPSs for a long time. But it's not all bad though. Call of Duty Warzone seems to have struck a chord with the majority of players, and while I don't play it myself, I definitely see the appeal. And 2020's Doom Eternal is one of the most satisfying shooters I have ever played, and is actually something good that came from this year. But aside from modern shooters, retro shooters really stand out and hold up extremely well. Games like Ultimate Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, Quake, they're perfectly balanced with difficulty, have satisfying gunplay, and the level design is top notch. And for the time, this was what you would expect from a first-person shooter. A non-story driven series of missions that require you to kill enemies and gain items, whilst focusing on getting from point A to point B. You die, you restart the mission with your items stripped from your inventory. That was the norm. Until the 6th console generation. It was at this point where something was coming, something new, something big, something unexpected that would welcome first-person shooters to the console, and this thing was gonna be the reason the Xbox would succeed. Halo Combat Evolved, the game that broke the rulebook of the genre and showed what this new console, the Xbox, was capable of. And back when consoles actually had big differences between each other, this game had to have a lot to offer. It had to differ from its competitors. And my god, did it differ. Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Talk, where we talk about games. With the recent release of Halo 3 on PC and with Halo Infinite's gameplay being revealed and I thought it would be a perfect time to go over the first game ever being released on the Xbox, becoming a staple franchise on the Xbox. Doom. But where the protagonist talks. Halo Combat Evolved changed first-person shooters to the point where you still see the lasting effects of this game, still to this day. I not only wanted to see why that was the case, but I also wanted to see if this game holds up today. But that's not the only reason why. Think about the things that have always been in your life, the things you don't remember first encountering. Things like humans, the sun, hell, the whole world. It's always been there. You don't remember encountering these things for the very first time as you were much too young. Well, Halo is one of those things for me. For as long as I remember being on this planet, Halo has been a part of my memories. Through thick and thin, through my entire childhood, even to when I was a toddler, Halo has been there. Whether it be me playing Halo 2 before I even went to bloody school, or watching my brother or my dad play Halo 1, or me and my brother having arguments on whether we should play co-op or custom games, you get the picture. For as far as my memory goes back, I've known what Halo was. Hell, one of the first memories I even have is an image of me looking at the TV screen and seeing the plasma pistol from Halo on it. Alright, enough with the soppy shit. Did you know Halo was supposed to be a Macintosh exclusive? Halo was developed by Bungie, who of course are responsible for modern games such as Destiny and wait, do they even make anything else anymore? The concept of Halo was to be a futuristic shooter where you would have to battle a variety of enemies with a variety of weapons. Standard procedure for shooters at the time, but what set Halo apart was the setting. Halo is of course set on, well, Halo, an artificial ring world floating through space, making for some amazing environments, skyboxes and level design. And yeah, you heard me right before. Halo was intended to be an exclusive for Mac, the franchise that is a staple to the Xbox and is developed by Microsoft Studios, was supposed to be a Mac exclusive. Life is crazy, isn't it? Well, that wasn't the case, and it would be the key, the piece in the puzzle that would drive the Xbox to stardom. The thing that would give people the reason to flock to this new Microsoft console instead of sticking with Sony or Nintendo, even though the PS2 sold about 6 times more units than the Xbox. But this was the second most sold game on the Xbox with a whopping 5 million sales, so I guess it must have done something right. But whatever this game did right, does it still do right? Well, there's only one way to find out. Ladies and gents, get ready, get set, keep your socks on, and keep your socks on. First of all, the menu. Not just iconic, but the execution was great. Ominous and mysterious, yet rather religious style music, accompanied by the camera capturing the pure size of the anomaly, being an artificial yet somewhat natural rotating ring world. We don't exactly know what this thing is yet, so it is kinda eerie and haunting at the same time. Nevertheless, starting up the campaign will show you a scene of a ship called the Pillar of Autumn heading towards the ring we saw in the main menu, accompanied by the track Halo from Beyonce. From the dialogue, we can tell that this ship is containing humans on the run from a group of alien species known as the Covenant, making the events before this a mystery. Covenant troops start boarding the ship when Captain Keyes releases a Spartan, aka Super Soldier, out of the cryo chamber. This Spartan happens to be the protagonist of the game, Spartan 117, Master Chief.
Captain Keyes.
The captain orders the Master Chief to take the shipboard AI Cortana with him and abandon ship, while he tries to land her on this ring world. So you get given an unloaded handgun and in you go. We're gonna ignore the fact that a lethal group of alien species has boarded the ship and the captain gives his best soldier an unloaded handgun and continue. One thing you probably noticed about Halo is that unlike most shooters at the time, Halo is quite story driven. Shooters around this time were very arcadey and would literally send you into mission 1 as soon as you press start, but not Halo. It's about 10 minutes in where the cutscenes and setup ends before combat starts. Halo combat evolved, more like Halo combat starts in 10 minutes. But onto the actual gameplay itself. Halo has a very retro gameplay style. No sprinting and extremely high and floaty jump mechanics, but also incorporates modern elements of shooters, such as using a specific number of ammunition in the clip before reloading, and the ability to melee, usually with the butt of your gun, on the fly. The gameplay is fast and sporadic. Enemies will do high amounts of damage with fast projectile-based weaponry. The levels are designed with a lot of obstacle in place to compensate for this, as you can use any object you can think of as cover, like you would in a realistic combat situation. Enemies are not only tough, but they're smart though, as they travel in groups and will not be afraid to come at you while you're in cover, while suppressing fire, keeping you in your position at the same time. The gameplay just gets more intense with a variety of enemies on screen at once, accompanied by the Marines, which will help you out. Well, not by much, in fact they're quite shit, but they do help and will join you in vehicular combat later on in the game, and I wouldn't recommend attacking the Marines either. I may or may not have done that. Whoops. Death isn't too punishing though, as the game is checkpoint based. Every time you get to a new section of a level, a checkpoint will activate, and when you die, you respawn there. I do kinda wish there was a bit more punishment for dying, but the levels can last up to 40 minutes at times, and the difficulty curve is quite high, so the system works. The health system was a welcome change. FPS games before this will usually rely on a percentage or number displaying what your health was, 100 being the max and 0 being dead. But health pickups would be laid around the map to replenish health. Halo has a shielding system on top of the health system. Master Chief has an energy shield that can get taken down if attacked for too long, and would give you an audio and visual warning that your life is at risk. But if you take cover, it will recharge if not attacked for a short period of time. Health is represented by these bars here, and would start depleting if attacked while energy shields were down. The only way to replenish health lost is with health packs, which are not very easy to find. I mean, I doubt whoever made this floating ring world through space considered that would be a war zone in the future. What this game did that was especially out of the ordinary for the time was the ability to only hold a primary and secondary weapon, and be able to swap with other weapons you find. The norm before this was to have your character be able to hold a whole arsenal of weapons on themselves. While this new system was rather realistic and made sense, I mean, actually imagine what it would look like with a million fucking guns on you. Christ almighty, the Covenant would be scared off their melons if they saw this. The Halo series wouldn't exist as we know it. Yeah, this new system makes sense and all, but the older system was much more balanced, as you could switch to the specific weapon depending on the situation. While with Halo's system, you're stuck with 2 weapons and you have to plan ahead. But hey, the old system was designed with keyboard and mouse in mind, so this system would be the ideal system. The first mission is pretty stock standard for these futuristic shooters, being in a space station, or in this case, a boarded spaceship. The layout is quite simple and linear. Most rooms look the same, and in terms of difficulty, it isn't too hard. It's only on the next level where you land on the Halo ring is when the amazing level design, visuals, and skyboxes kick in. Instantly, the game turns from a futuristic run-and-gun sci-fi shooter to a huge war-zoned sandbox, with out-of-this-world, literally, visuals. And with each section of each level, the gameplay style is constantly shifting. You have gameplay styles such as exploration through environments to find objectives, defensive situations that require you to stand your ground and survive with troops until evac arrives, massive vehicular offense, aerial firefights, areas that require you to outsmart your enemies and sneak past them, take enemies by surprise with long-range weaponry, and of course even more run-and-gun moments. With the constantly shifting gameplay, the game never ceases to feel fresh and like there's always something different to encounter. One minute you're shooting aliens like normal and the next minute Beyonce shows up and... One thing that separated Halo from other shooters at the time was the enemies, the memorable and fun to combat enemies. And while there aren't too many enemies in Halo, a lot of them will have different ranks, where they'll look roughly the same, but have a slight difference in design, they'll behave differently, and even wield different weapons. The Grunts, also known by their species name Ungoi, are the cannon fodder of the Covenant. While rather weak, they travel in packs, and if you see a Grunt, they're usually more powerful enemies nearby. Grunts can also get easily scared and tend to run away, but will eventually come to their senses and return to combat. Some Grunts won't get as easily scared though, and these Grunts usually carry weaponry, allowing for massive collateral damage. But while the weakest of the Covenant, they are still to be taken seriously, as you never know when a pack of Grunts will show up and take you out before you can even react. The species Kig-Yar, more commonly known as the Jackals, are a more unforgiving enemy than the Grunts, also traveling in packs. While using rather similar weaponry to the Grunts, Jackals have shields protecting the front of them at all times. Human weaponry will have a hard time breaking these shields, so the best course of action is to aim for their arm and let them reveal their body for a better shot. But don't be too liberal on them because they can outsmart you pretty easily, and won't be afraid to fire EMP shots, obliterating your shields. The Elites, also known as the Sangheili, are the Covenant's most devout and ruthless soldiers. Accompanied by their violent designs, Elites have energy shields protecting them that are quite hard to breach, and while active, it'll basically be impossible to stun them. As the Elite's color changes, the tougher they become. The Blue Elite, known as the Miner, will be the usual infantry soldier, and just because they're the lowest rank of the Elite doesn't mean you should take down your guard at any moment. The Red Elite, known as the Major, will act in the same way as the Blue Elite does, but energy shields of the Major will be much harder to penetrate. Same thing applies for the Black Spec Ops Elites. They'll act the same way, but be even tougher. Stealth Elites will end your life when you least expect it. When walking into an area and it seems too quiet, it might already be too late. Because while these Elites have no energy shields whatsoever, they are tough to see with their active camouflage armor. But then there are the Zealots, the toughest of all Elites. The Golden Zealots are not only tough to take down, but are easy to anger. When getting too close to one, it will charge at you wielding an energy sword, which will kill you as soon as it hits you. The Zealots are the complete opposite of merciful, but that's not all the Covenant has to offer. There are also the Hunters. Also known as Lek Golo, the Hunters come in pairs of two and are the toughest the Covenant has to offer. They have a threatening presence, they wield explosive fuel rod guns, they have impenetrable armor, and stand over 12 feet tall. That is enough to make you panic by the sheer sight of them. The only way to kill a Hunter is by attacking its weak spots on their neck and back, and that isn't the easiest thing to do, especially for the fact that if you get too close to them, they won't hesitate to knock you right down, quicker than Chris Brown did to Rihanna. I'm gonna stop right there. The gunplay in Halo is absolutely above par and is purely satisfying. This isn't a coincidence or accident either. The combat in Halo is designed in a way where human weapons are hit scan weapons and Covenant weapons are projectile based. And this was a smart decision the developers at Bungie took, as one reason why Doom became the absolute addictive shooter that it was because of the fact that your movement would be the key factor in combat, as most enemies had projectile based weaponry. The balancing between the weapons here are also very thought out. The Magnum/pistol acts as the mid-range key weapon, as it can take down infantry troops in a couple shots. The Assault Rifle is a high magazine, high rate of fire, and low damage weapon that serves its purpose by being able to suppress fire on the enemy. The Shotgun acts as the close range powerhouse with low ammunition. The Sniper Rifle acts as the long range powerhouse with low ammunition. The Rocket Launcher will do splash damage, taking out a variety of enemies in a specific radius, but once again, ammunition supply is very low. Also, if you're easily startled like me, keep it holstered until you need it. otherwise that will happen. The frag grenade can be used for the same purpose as the rocket launcher, but as a side ability while you're running low on ammo, or can be used to throw around corners taking out enemies while they least expect it. The plasma grenade will not do as much damage as the frag grenade, but it is able to stick to enemies, allowing for a guaranteed kill. The plasma pistol, which can be used as a moderate damage suppression tool, or can be charged up as an EMP shot to take down Jackal and Elite shields. The plasma rifle, which acts as a fully automatic plasma pistol that can take down Elite and Jackal shields quite quickly, and does not have the ability to reload, but can overheat if used for too long over a short period of time, like the plasma pistol. And one of Halo's most iconic weapons, the Needler, which is the hardest to use, but it is a heat-seeking rapid-fire needle launcher. The catch is, when a large number of needles get attached to an enemy, a super combine effect starts, and the enemy explodes into a purple blaze. While not as balanced as other games, each weapon in Halo serves its purpose, some more than others, but some planning and strategy comes into play with them, such as using a plasma pistol to take down Elite shields and switching to your pistol to cap them off while they're vulnerable. Not to mention the outstanding and violent sound effects to all the weapons makes me shit in excitement, but alas, it's time for me to talk about the visuals. Environments, don't get me wrong, for the time, this was beyond belief of what was capable back then, and it still looks pretty beautiful today. The colors, the Forerunner art style, the gorgeous skyboxes capturing the beauty of Halo, and how it wraps around the skybox, it's fantastic. My issue with the visuals themselves are the character models. During gameplay, you wouldn't really notice any of this, but during the cutscenes, it does kind of break away from the atmosphere. The models themselves seem way too flat with very little detail. The animation is painfully stiff, and it doesn't seem like there was too much effort put into lip syncing. The overall direction of the cutscene seems way too bland as well. Unlike other games from 2001, Halo doesn't capture the emotion in the characters' faces and body language. Rather, they seem way too robotic. But hey, it could be worse. Imagine the dialogue was taken out and new dialogue was added in purely on how the lips are animated. But luckily enough, Halo has an absolutely beautiful in-game atmosphere. The game manages to capture a mood as easy as capturing expired meat in your local kebab shop. Whether it be scaling a cliff wall in the shadows of night, storming Covenant defenses with a group of Marines in a tank, exploring abandoned, foggy, artificial caves, whatever. The game makes you feel like you're taking part in this futuristic war zone. And the score is nothing short of phenomenal as well. Composed by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, the soundtrack captures the religious nature of the Covenant, as well as the mysteriousness of the location of the game, while in other sections captures the heroicness and the triumph of the human race in the war under all odds. But the greatest thing the atmosphere does is when Halo shifts from a first-person shooter game into an action horror game. My favorite mission in Halo is Mission 6, 343 Guilty Spark. So far in the story, we land on Halo, and find out that Captain Keyes has been captured and taken prisoner on a Covenant ship. After we free him, he informs us about what he overheard the Covenant talking about. Halo seems to have some sort of deep religious significance within the Covenant. Cortana assumes that it could be a weapon. Upon finding Halo's control center and inserting Cortana into Halo's core, she suddenly gets filled with all the ring's information, who built it and what it was for. All of a sudden, she realizes that the weapons cache the Captain and his squadron are looking for was not what it seemed. Before she could explain, she told Chief to find the Captain before it was too late, forcing the Master Chief to leave her in the Halo system without knowing what was going on. In 343 Guilty Spark, we get dropped off by Echo 419 in a foggy swamp. In this mission, there is very little dialogue as Cortana isn't with you. All the Covenant you find seem to be scared and are running from something. Upon entering an abandoned structure, you get led down to an underground facility. It's here where things start getting worse. You'll come to find bloodied hallways and bodies of the Covenant you know you didn't kill. Yellowish green flaky goop falling from the ceiling, a crazed Marine that has clearly lost his mind when he starts talking nonsense and shoots you, and the music up until this point in the level hasn't really been music, it's more like ambience. You get to a room where a Marine flops down when the door opens, and you view a footage through a Marine's helmet who lost his life somehow. In the footage we see the Marines and Captain Keyes entering this facility and making it down to the room you're in, when they get contacted by other Marines screaming for their life, as the only intelligible words we can hear is lots of contacts and not Covenant, as they start getting ambushed by these large spider-like creatures when the footage cuts out. When gameplay starts, a haunting hum begins as text appears on the screen saying simply, "The Flood," as those same creatures start bursting through the doors around you, as well as mutated elites which sprint towards you and start attacking you. This, ladies and gents, is the Flood, a non-sentient, vastly intelligent plague that expands on itself by eating and infecting its victims. It turns out that Halo was not just a ring-like planet floating through space. In fact, it's an installation used to not only contain the Flood, but eliminate the Flood in case of outbreak. The Flood that you combat also comes in many forms. Infection forms, which are foot-tall spider-like creatures that attempt to infect you. While your energy shields are up, they aren't a problem. But when they're down and your health is exposed, these little bastards will end your life quite quickly, so be cautious on which route you take, and always be prepared to run. Carrier forms are huge, vile, tumorous forms of flood, which carry infection forms. Getting too close to a carrier will result in it exploding and taking a huge chunk of your health with it, but you can also use them to create a chain reaction with other carrier forms within the vicinity. I used to be terrified of the carrier forms as a kid, and they still kind of freak me out today. Mainly because they look like my balls. Combat forms are the infected. They can come in many shapes and sizes, but will usually resemble the rotting shell of what was once a sentient being. Combat forms are the fastest moving enemies in the game, and won't be afraid to hit you when possible. They can also wield any weapon in the game, so to sink in the fact that the Flood is a bigger threat than the Covenant, they can wield hit scan weapons, making it virtually impossible to dodge their attacks. Accompanied by the fact that from this point on in the game, the Marines won't help you anymore. You're a lone wolf in this chaotic war zone with a threat that you've already experienced and a new, much more dangerous threat. And I'm not really the one to get scared by zombies, but the Flood, especially the way they're introduced, still gives me the chills to this day. So tell me why everything after this was complete bollocks. The last third of Halo is so underwhelming due to the poor level design and unoriginality. First of all, for all the Halo fans out there, all I have to say are two words: the library. The library is infamous for being one of the most annoying, repetitive, boring, and tedious missions in all of gaming history. Here's the formula. You have a really bland and boring environment, and your objective is to get from the first floor to the fourth floor of this library area. Fair enough, right? No! You run down a big hallway, kill Flood. Run down another hallway, kill Flood. Wait for the monitor to open up a door while you kill Flood. Run down a couple more hallways while killing Flood. Go up an elevator, rinse and repeat 3 more times. There's very minimal dialogue or atmosphere in this level either, so there's literally not much to enjoy here, and it just drags on and on for about 40 minutes to an hour depending on how much you died, which will probably be a lot because this level is really goddamn hard, and that wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't so boring. And then the next level, 2 betrayals. Aside from a cool Banshee flying section and an awesome firefight which gets boring after you die a few times, it's basically an identical mission to Mission 5, Assault on the Control Room, just with Flood. It has nothing new to offer. Then the next mission, Keys. It's the exact same layout as Mission 3, Truth and Reconciliation, but with a small new section underneath the ship. Then the final mission, The Maw. Luckily, the last half of the mission stands its ground, because the first half is just a reskin of the first mission, The Pillar of Autumn. And the worst part of all the reuse of all the level designs, unoriginality, and the fucking library is it ruins the Flood. The Flood in Mission 6 were scary, and combat with them was genuinely tough. Tough, but fun. After that, the gameplay style with the Flood never changes. No stealth, no vehicular combat, just run and gun. That's it. It was just the same shit again and again and again. Though I'm ranting too much, what exactly happens in the story? Well, it turns out the Covenant accidentally released the Flood, and the monitor of Installation 04, aka Halo, shows up to the Master Chief and brings him to the library where they retrieve the index to activate Halo to wipe out the Flood. After returning to the control room to reunify the index with the core, Cortana stops the activation. While she was in the Ring's core, Cortana learnt what Halo actually does. If activated, Halo will wipe out sentient life in a 25,000 light year radius. It turns out that Halo doesn't kill Flood, it kills their food. It's the only way to stop it. The monitor didn't inform the Master Chief about this, and before a lethal mistake was made, Cortana took the index with her so the monitor couldn't activate Halo. But before the monitor could get a chance to activate Halo, Master Chief and Cortana had to destroy Halo by disliking it on YouTube. They headed to the crash site of the Pillar of Autumn and set to self-destruct its core, destroying Halo in the process. But since the monitor stopped the self-destruct sequence, Master Chief had a plan B, and results in one of the most badass moments in video game cutscene history.
How much firepower would you need to crack one of the engine's shields?
Not much. A well-placed grenade, perhaps, but why? Okay, I'm coming with you.
This last part in the game kinda makes up for the unoriginality in the past few levels. After damaging the engine's core to a critical state, you have a limited time to escape from the Pillar of Autumn. So you have to drive a warthog from one end of the ship to another to get to a shuttle bay with a longsword ship. The triumphant and intense music gets more and more intense as the ship starts to get more unstable while it rips itself apart, and Chief and Cortana make it out just in time as the core blows up, ripping Halo to pieces. And overall, the ending's quite good. It's really badass and triumphant, but at the same time, it's also kind of melancholy because most humans that made it on Halo in the first place actually didn't end up escaping. And of course, the game ends on the most typical quote ever.
Halo. It's finished.
No. I think we're just getting started.
Halo, what do I exactly think of you? I know it sounded like I gave this game a lot of praise, but I don't exactly know if it holds up in the same way today. If you're looking to play this for the first time in 2020, there's a lot to look forward to. The gunplay is satisfying, the atmosphere is fantastic, and the experience is rather good. But at the same time, the movement is very floaty and slow. It's a bit rough around the edges, especially with the final third of the game, and the story too. The story seemed to focus on events more than the characters, which shouldn't be the case. It should be a 50-50 split. Due to this, character deaths like Captain Keyes and Foehammer doesn't really hit you all that hard because their characters weren't exactly built upon. They had no depth, no growth, and you barely even saw them. You could tell that Bungie wanted these deaths to be quite emotional, but it doesn't really work out when you don't even know the characters all that well. Plus, Master Chief is boring. He's supposed to be a super soldier badass, but it comes across as just some guy. Master Chief, at least in Halo 1, has no depth whatsoever. And I'm not going to criticize either Steve Downes, the voice actor, or the writing, because it could be both. But each time Master Chief talks for more than 2 seconds at a time, I want to fall asleep. It's that monotone. And in terms of visuals, it is washed out in a lot of sections today, then the models are something to be desired. But overall, the game does look fairly decent today. But yeah, it would be nice if there was a remaster. Hold on a second. Oh yeah, Halo Anniversary, almost forgot. 10 years after the release of Halo was Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. This remaster is a pretty damn faithful one as well. It's the exact same game as you remember it, but with a complete graphical overhaul and a re-recorded soundtrack. Nostalgia factor is completely there, as it feels the same, but it just looks a whole console generation and a half better. And the best feature of this remaster is complete novelty. It did not need to have this, but you're able to switch between Anniversary and classic graphics on the fly. That is basically the coolest thing ever. And there's obvious problems with the game, such as atmosphere in the Mission 343 Guilty Spark being dumbed down, and transparent objects in classic graphics looking completely washed out. And for some reason in classic graphics, Captain Keyes' model is not the same as the original Xbox version. I don't understand what happened there. But aside from that, this is probably the most faithful remaster I've ever played, and should serve as a prime example on how to do remasters. Now, I would do a full review of Halo Anniversary, don't get me wrong, but I'm also a huge cunt. Nevertheless though, Halo Combat Evolved makes the okay list and gets a 6 out of 10. That kind of pains me to say because I actually love this game with all my heart. Actually, most of my heart. The library can eat my shit. And it was one of the first gaming experiences I've ever had. But today, it isn't exactly a masterpiece. It's shown its age, not by too much, but by enough. But regardless of that, I still can appreciate what this game did for the Xbox. It put it on the map, and it popularized first-person shooters for consoles. Plus, it had a really cool multiplayer mode with well-designed maps, cool new game types, and the PC port that allowed for online play in 2003. This game was a hit, and while it did sell the second most amount of copies on the Xbox, with 5 million sales, there was something else. Something that would sell over 8 million units. Something bigger. Something better. Something that would ultimately change the way people thought about first-person shooters forever. Hello, it's me again, and it's been a while. To end off this unexpectedly long video, I'd like to say thanks if you made it to the end. If you like what you saw today, then please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That lets me know you want more. Thank you all so much once again, and I will talk to you before you know it. See you later.